It's 8:15. We're going to get started.
The herd. Many species utilize this sociological system. A pride of lions, a parade of elephants, and a battery of barracudas. Today we will observe in depth the dynamics and behaviors of the Christian small group. First, the group gathers. The females give a variety of greetings. The handshake, the one-armed hug, and the wave. The males greet in a much different fashion. The shake then hug, the fist bump, and the nod. Notice the bulky male. Let's call him Jim. He gives the dreaded overly long hug. There is no escape now for the group leader grade. Nourishment is an essential part to begin small groups. This is the time where the group engage in friendly conversations. Take a look at Steve, for instance. He is taking full advantage of the feeding ground. He will be well prepared for the long winter to come. Vital to the herd's well-being in the real jungle, prayer requests give the group a chance to express their concerns and problems with their time away from the herd. There is Susan, the confessor. She pours out her soul every week, often in great detail. It makes most of the group feel very uncomfortable, especially the males. Ah, look, there's the low talker. He always offers great insight, and everyone in the group would admire his opinion if they could only actually hear him. Only certain species of owls could fully comprehend his dialect. There is the group's overtalker. Let's call him Chatty. He could go on for hours on what God has taught him 15 minutes ago. And to no one's surprise, the late arrival. We'll call him Tardy. His presence is not unlike a sick animal endangering the herd. Still a part of the group and always welcome, but certainly not reliable enough for carpooling. As Greg closes the small group in prayer, the herd comes together, and despite all their quirks and their personalities, they become unified. And thus the herd thrives.
Let me pray. God, I'm so thankful for what you're doing in Irving, Texas. And I'm thankful for what you're doing in lots of churches here, and there are lots of churches that are doing great, and we're very thankful for that. And we're thankful for what you're doing here at Christ Church. We ask that you would continue to lead and guide us and allow us to just follow where you lead. And as you lead us, we will lead others into a closer relationship with you, into a saving relationship with your Son, into a following relationship always. Thank you for being the great leader. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, the term pastor is one that is often used in churches, and it has a dual role. One of those roles is a title of a position. And so people will call me pastor whether I am doing the actual job of being a pastor or not. It's my title. And yet, you do the work of a pastor. You care for the people who are in your flock. You pray for the people in your group. You are an example to people around you. You teach people when you have godly wisdom to share. And you do the work of a pastor. And so we are so honored that you would give up your time on a Saturday morning to just come and for us to be able to hear about how we can lead people better and to share ideas with each other on ways that we can just do an effective job of equipping and training the saints for ministry. Because it's not the staff's job to do ministry. It's not your job to do all the ministry. It's each of our jobs to do the piece that God has gifted us to do, but it is all of our jobs as leaders to equip others to do what God has led them to do. So God bless you for being here today. I know it'll be fruitful for our church. It will be good for you and your soul. And I am just excited about what God is going to do. Our primary presenters today are going to be Jim and Jennifer, who have spent a tremendous amount of time on this material. And as we've looked through and vetted it and gone through, we have picked the best of the best to share with you today. So, if you will, help me welcome Jim and Jennifer.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. I'm Jim, and this is Jennifer, and we're excited for the day. I want to start by just kind of giving you a little bit of information about where we are in our groups right now. We have roughly 16 men's groups that are meeting in one form or another. 16, let me rephrase that, 16 either men's groups or co-ed groups, okay? Then we have 32 women's groups that are meeting. Yeah. Way to go, women, right? Yes, girls rule. That gives you an idea that we've got some work to do on the men's side, right? We've got some work to do. And so we're really thankful for all of the groups that meet. We're thankful for you as leaders. We also have Regen groups that meet. We have 6 groups that meet in Regen, 3 men and 3 ladies. Our biggest needs right now, our biggest needs going forward, just quickly, we need people that can lead young singles and young couples. That's an area that we're really lacking right now in our groups. We have a number of men and women, single men and women that have come through our church over the last 6 months to a year looking for connection, and we haven't been able to get them connected, and that's our failure for not being able to do that. And many of those individuals have not stayed. They've moved on to other places where they could make connection. So we need individuals who are able to lead young men, young women, and young couples. And so those are areas that we're looking at especially. We're also starting a new group called Starting Point. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But Starting Point is especially for people that have questions, doubts. They're not really sure what they believe or don't believe, but they're here and they're searching. And Starting Point's a great place where people can come, express their doubts. It's a curriculum. It's curriculum-based, and so we're not asking leaders to be apologists or anything, able to answer any and every question that people have. They simply go through the curriculum, and then there's group discussion. What we're looking to do is, this is a great event. We're looking to have better training for our leaders. We're looking to be more cohesive as a team. Better planning to offer better resources to our leaders and better support to our leaders. And that starts right here, okay? And I'm going to let Jennifer say a few words, and then we're going to jump into the first session.
All right, so the reason that you are here today is because you have a gift to lead. And maybe that's a gift that you've recognized in yourself and you've stepped up and said, hey, I want to lead a group. Or maybe we have recognized that in you and we have asked you to lead a group. So there's some of you that are here today that are not current group leaders, and you're probably wondering why you received an email from me or Jim or a text asking you to be here. And it's because we've seen in you the potential to be a group leader. And so we're really glad that you're here. And so as a leader, please remember that you are assuming a very special kind of role, all right? The church leadership is trusting you to lead people, and the people that you're leading are also trusting you to lead them, right? It's a great privilege and responsibility that we have as leaders. Sometimes it's hard, but it's also very, very rewarding. You get an opportunity to speak into the lives of the people in your groups as well as people outside of your groups. you have the opportunity to lead people to a stronger relationship with Jesus, or maybe a relationship with Jesus at all. They may not have one at all. And you get to help build the kingdom of God. So it's such a privilege and responsibility that we have. And we are here today because we want to help you to be confident in your role as a leader. And the reason that you should be confident is because the people want you to lead them, right? They're choosing to be in your group. If you are leading a group, every person in your group has chosen to have you as their leader, right? So they're confident that you can do it. They're expecting you to do it, and they're happy to be in your group. They believe in you. And we also want you to lead those people. We're equipping you here today to lead, and we believe in you, right? So how can you be confident? Other than this training, there's 4 simple ways to be confident as a leader. Number 1, it's submit your life to Christ, right? Follow him, walk with him daily. The second is to be humble. Sometimes when you're in a position of leadership, the enemy will lie to you and tell you it's about you, and it's not, right? It's about him. And so be humble as Jesus was humble. And then pray and seek wisdom. In James 1:5, it says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, and he'll give it to you, right? And then finally, be prepared. And we're going to talk about that in session 2.
Okay, so we're going to have 4 sessions today. And we pray that we could have had 24, and yet we wanted to be efficient. And most of us have been in really good groups with really good leaders. And some of us have been in really good groups with really bad leaders. And so the question is, what makes a good group leader? And many of you could actually come and teach this because you are fantastic at leading your groups. But even the best group leader can look and see best practices to be even better. So this is session 1 from Jim. What makes a good group leader?
Thanks, Greg. On your table, there's a packet. There should be enough for everybody. And you're welcome. That packet just has an outline of what we're going to be talking about. You, of course, take notes, use those packets. At any time during any of our sessions, if you need to go get coffee or food or stretch your legs, of course, you're welcome to do that. Let me just start out with our goal. Our goal in all of our groups is to help people become more devoted followers of Jesus. That's our goal, and we want to focus on that goal. We want to encourage you to challenge yourself. Okay, what am I doing in my group that's helping my group become better followers of Jesus Christ? And we're going to do that through helping people make connections. Relationships are so important. Community's important. Right? We have over 30 one another commands in the New Testament, where we're encouraging one another, supporting one another, praying for one another, confessing to one another. All those commands are best fulfilled in small group settings. People come to groups because they want to make connection. So we want to help people become better followers of Jesus by giving them a support group, helping them make connection. We want to help them grow spiritually in their understanding and in their application of God's will to their life. We want to help them grow through meaningful conversation that challenges them in their walk with Jesus. Okay, so we're there to help people grow. And so when we're choosing curriculum, when we're planning our group sessions, we just want to try to take seriously this goal. How is this going to help us get to where we're trying to go? That's our win. And so in understanding our win and communicating that win, then we're going to be able to have a better chance of reaching that goal. So let me talk to you just a little bit about some things that we can do as leaders that are going to be important and helpful in moving our group toward becoming better and better equipped followers of Jesus Christ. First, as leaders, we want to earn the right to lead. Okay? Earning the right to lead does not mean that we go out and get college degrees. Okay? It doesn't mean that we get a professional counseling certificate of some kind. If you want to do those things, that's great, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not asking anybody to be Bible scholars. We're simply asking our group leaders to be able to facilitate groups. Okay, so we're facilitators, we're guides, we're not experts. We don't even want to come across as experts. As Jennifer said, if the group perceives that this is about us, the group's not going to be very successful. Okay, people are only going to come for so long to hear us talk about ourselves or to have some perception that we're there to build ourselves up. And so we want to earn the right to lead by first being a devoted follower of Jesus ourselves. Absolutely essential, right? We're not giving instruction and sending people out to do something. We're not military commanders saying, go take that hill, right? You go out and live the Christian life. You go out and do what you're supposed to be doing as disciples. What we're doing is leading from the front. And we can't expect to lead anybody into places where we're not willing to go or where we haven't traveled. Okay, so that means we have to ourselves, if we're going to equip others to be followers of Jesus, we're going to have to be followers of Jesus. And so we're introspectively going to have to be willing as leaders to look at our lives. Paul said, he said to the Corinthians, follow me even as I follow Christ. And so there's a principle there where we're earning that right by setting a proper example, earning the respect as a fellow follower of Jesus Christ. We want to create communities that are hubs of care, pastoral care. Greg talked about this earlier, and Jennifer's going to talk about it a lot more. We want our groups to be a place where people make connection in loving and caring ways. And so as group leaders, one of the ways that we lead effectively is we give thought to that. How can I make this group a place of pastoral care? We want people to make connection. Well, as group leaders, we're going to have to consciously think, what am I doing to help my participants, to help my people build those relationships, to connect to one another? All of our groups should have some time built into them where people are able to interact. And we need to find ways to facilitate that and to be able to evaluate honestly, okay, what am I doing, or how did that group session go? Did people connect? Did they not connect? We want to be able to evaluate and facilitate the connection that people are making within the group. And as leaders, we want to help our people grow spiritually. And that's not just learning content. Right? We emphasize this a lot. We can't emphasize it enough. We're not trying to make Bible scholars out of people. We're not trying to help people win Bible trivia contests, right? We're trying to help people follow Jesus. And that's going to happen only when, one, we have to understand what God's will is for our lives, but two, we're there to help people apply that truth effectively in how they're living. And so the application of truth needs to be a part of every meeting. And we can help facilitate that with good questions. Hey, let's go around the room. Is there anything you learned this week from the study? Is there anything you learned tonight? What from tonight's discussion struck you or do you think would be helpful to you? What do you think from our discussion tonight, what can you take away and do differently this week? And so we can ask questions that help stimulate people thinking through what they've learned and what they're going to apply. we want to also facilitate life sharing. And I'm going to talk a lot more about that in our last session, but let me just introduce this by saying one of the things that we're going to be asking all of our groups to do is to have some time in their group that they carve out, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, it can be longer if it needs to be, but to carve out a time where individuals can talk about what's going on in their lives. And I'm not talking about just taking prayer requests where people say, yeah, my Aunt Marge, has cancer. Great, let's pray for Aunt Marge, right? That's great, but also what we need is we need to have people be able to talk about what's going on in their life, what's happening in their relationship with God, what's happening in their struggles, what's happening in their successes. We want people to be able to share what's going on. And that not only builds closer connections, more intimacy within the group, but it builds discipleship accountability. It builds this community of support and trust with one another. It allows us to pray for one another. It's a really important part of what we're doing. Okay? So, in our groups, God gives us the opportunity to walk beside people and to see them grow. And our challenge is to be facilitators in that. And as we facilitate, God comes in with His Spirit and His power. And as people, we're not going to make anybody grow. We can't make people connect, but we can create the environment. We can create the opportunity. And as people are submitting their lives to God, if we are willing to lead people in the right directions, God will transform lives, and we get that front row seat where we get to see it happen. And that's the joy of leading in small groups. Okay? Jennifer's going to Greg's going to introduce the next section. Yep, stand up, stretch your legs, then Greg's going to introduce session 2. Hey, before we do that, quickly, does anybody have any quick question they'd like to ask about anything in session 1? Good. If you do think of something, write it down. We're going to get questions later in the day. Okay, stretch your legs, 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to start session 2.
1 minute. 1 minute. $55 seconds. $45 seconds. $30 seconds, everyone. 30 seconds. $20 seconds. 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6. Okay, well, that's exactly 5 minutes from when Jim said we were going to take a 5-minute break. Those of you who have been around me a little bit know that I am time conscious. And I like to start on time, and I like to finish early when possible. And when we have a staff meeting, it starts at 9:30, and Nick can tell you it starts at 9:30, not 9:31. And we are right now 22 minutes ahead of schedule. Don't be fooled. So Jim did a great job of telling us what a good group leader is, but now some practical tips on how to lead a group effectively. How to lead. How do you make decisions, and how do you do that in the midst of a group? So, if you will, please give a warm Christ Church wonderful welcome to the wonderful, marvelous JT.
Greg very nicely told you not to be fooled because he knows that I can be long-winded. So we're going to keep this as tight as we can. He's already strongly encouraged me this morning to, he showed me the schedule. He said, see this? I said, yeah, that looks about right. And he's like, no, this is right. So, okay, so we're going to talk about how you can lead a group effectively. And what we're really talking about here is within your group meetings, okay? And so the first thing for successful group leadership is to make a plan, all right? Plans help us to be confident. Plans help us to, for our groups to be more successful. If you know what you're going to do coming in, your group is going to be more successful than if you're just winging it, right? And also it reduces frustrations. And we're going to talk a lot about that in the next session. We're going to talk about exactly how to make a plan. But that's the first step, is make a plan, all right? Your second step for your group is going to be to choose curriculum. I'm sorry, I'm like doing this because I'm used to holding a microphone on Sunday mornings. So, is this okay, Andrew? Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right. So the second step is to choose a curriculum for your group. And we actually have a couple of different types of groups here at Christ Church. The first type of group, thank you, Andrew. He gave me this and I may forget, so he's got my back. All right, so the second, there's two types of groups at Christ Church. One is what we call curriculum-specific groups, okay? These are groups like Flourish, the Starting Point group, Christianity 101, Regen. These are groups that are put together for a specific purpose with a curriculum already in place. You don't choose that curriculum, you just agree to lead that group or don't, okay? So that's kind of how that works. But the other type of group, right now, a lot of our groups are curriculum specific because a lot of our groups are Flourish groups right now, right? We gave you the curriculum, you knew when you started that that's what you were leading, and so you didn't have to choose a curriculum. A lot of our groups here are what we call general community groups, and that's where the curriculum is flexible, okay? And these groups are, those of you that are already leading a co-ed group or some type of group like that, your group is already happening. But we're going to be doing group launches each year in the fall, like September and January. And that just gives a really easy entry point for new people to the church, or maybe people that have come out of Flourish or Regen or something and they're wanting to join a group. And so that's how kind of what our general community groups are going to look like. And these are the groups where you're going to be choosing curriculum, all right? Because if you're the leader, unless Greg or Keith say, hey, for a season, we want everybody to do this curriculum, unless that happens, you're going to be responsible for choosing the study or the curriculum for your group. And so the best practices for choosing that curriculum, number one, is to know your group. Oh, wait, no, we're still in curriculum. All right, sorry. So know your group. And the first thing about knowing your group is how committed do they want to be, okay? How often are your groups meeting? Are your groups meeting weekly? Are they meeting every other week? How often are y'all meeting? As a rule, I would say that if your group is gung-ho about meeting every single week, they're a little bit more committed than a group that's meeting every other week. And that's not negative. I don't mean to say that in a negative way. It's just that if your people are so excited to meet that they want to be there every week, you might be able to give them a little bit more, okay? Maybe they are wanting a daily study or something like that, okay? So just look at how often your group is wanting to meet. And then also look at what other groups that they might already be a part of. Because some of you that are in co-ed groups, the women may be doing a women's study and the men may be doing a men's study. So you're probably not going to want to choose a curriculum that has a daily workbook if you know that they're also in other groups, because that gets to be too much, right? So know your group, know what they're involved in, and know what they are willing to commit to. And you can talk to them about this, y'all. It's not like you have to choose all this on your own. Sit down and talk to your group and say, hey, what would y'all like to see? What are y'all interested in? And then also know their preferences. Know if they want to have a study that has daily homework, or know if they only want to come and just talk on Sundays and discuss the sermon. Or, some people want to do daily homework because it keeps them in the Word better, and some people do their own thing for daily time in the Word, and they just want to come to small group to discuss the sermon or to discuss, whatever study it is that y'all are doing. And then we need to look at the format, okay? There's so many different curriculums you can choose. There's sermon-based, where y'all are just talking through what it is that Keith is preaching on Sunday mornings. We've got video-based studies that we have. Right Now Media is a library of Bible studies that our church has access to, and all of these have a video that goes with them, and then discussion questions, all right? Maybe your group wants to do a text-based study, which you're just working through the book of John, or you're just working through the book of James, all right? And then, of course, we also have workbook-based studies like Discipleship Essentials that we did, like Flourish, okay? So you've got different options for format. And then there's also different topics to consider. Maybe your group wants to do a marriage study, or parenting, or Christianity as it relates to our culture, all right? So there's different topics to consider as well. And then also, you want to think about the length of your study. We were talking the other day, and he was saying that he recommends doing studies that are maybe 3 to 4 months in length, because if we want to start, our goal is that our groups would be starting new studies in September and in January, okay? And then you can take the summer off if you want, or if you want to meet through the summer, it's up to your group. That's whatever y'all want to do. But if we start a new study in September and we start a new study in January, it makes it easy for people to come in and not feel like they're breaking into the middle of something and like they're lost, all right? And so a 3 to 4 month study is great for that, but also 6-week studies would be great, because you could do 2 6-week studies back to back. That puts you at 12 weeks, and that works as well, okay? So just think, some groups might want to do shorter studies, and some people might like the year long. We recently did a survey of our women, and we found that it was completely broken into thirds. A third of our women wanted a year-long study, a third of our women wanted a 3 to 4 month study, and a third of our women wanted a 6-week study, okay? So talk to your group and see what they're willing to commit to and what sounds good to them, okay? And then, like I said, we have Right Now Media that y'all can go. And if you don't have a Right Now Media account, we can send you an invitation to that. That is free for everyone at our church. If you don't have that, you can come up and see me. I'll write down your name, or you can shoot me an email or a text and just let me know that you need an invitation, and I'll get that for you. But we also, our groups ministry has some curriculum recommendations. I don't know if that's in your packet. I know that we're working on compiling that. I don't know if that got finished or not. But we have some recommendations for curriculums that we have personally done. And we're also working on putting together a portal where you can go and you can see lots of different options for curriculum, get recommendations from things that we've personally vetted. And then finally, you can choose your own curriculum. The stuff that we recommend, that's not exhaustive. I mean, if you know of a curriculum that someone has recommended to you or that has been really great that you've heard of or that you've done, that's fine. All we ask is that you let us know what curriculum you're doing, because it just keeps us in the loop and it helps us when new people come in. I know James right now is leading a study on C.S. Lewis, okay? And so if someone comes in and that's something that they would be interested in, we could point them James's direction, okay? So it helps us to know what y'all are doing. So we ask that you do that. Okay, now, be prepared. Okay, so the third step in leading a group effectively is to be prepared. And really, being prepared is just knowing the material, right? We cannot lead well if we don't know the material. And we also can't expect our group members to come in prepared if we're not prepared. So if you have a study, I know that this is common sense for most of us, right? But I'll be the first to admit, there have been times when I've been leading a group and time has gotten away from me and it's been a busy week and I've walked into that group and I have not been well prepared. And I know that on those evenings I didn't lead my group as well because I wasn't, okay? And so, but the truth is that if we haven't done the homework, if we haven't really learned the lesson, we can't lead our group, and we also can't ask them to do anything that we haven't done, right? So it's really important for us to do that. And then here's just a little tip. If you don't have a study Bible, you need to get one, okay? If you do have a study Bible, you know how awesome they are. And having a study Bible, in my opinion, is the difference between reading the Bible and really being able to study your Bible, okay? And there's a lot of other resources. I should say that a study Bible is the easiest way to be able to really study your Bible without having to bring in concordances and commentaries and things like that, which most of us are not probably going to do on a regular basis, right? But your study Bible has the scripture at the top, and down at the bottom, it makes notes on cultural references to the time, word meanings in Greek and Hebrew. There's just things that are in the notes that would be really beneficial for you as a leader. So use a study Bible, okay? And then choose a few good questions in advance to discuss, because if you come in, so for our Flourish groups, most of our Flourish groups are meeting every other week, and each week there's 5 days worth of questions. So when a group comes together, they've got 10 questions to discuss. And if there's 4 people in a group and 10 questions to discuss, and all of them are answering every question, that's 40 different answers that you're gonna have, or that you're going to be trying to squeeze in a time period of an hour, right? And so what we recommend is to choose a couple of questions that are good questions that you know are going to foster conversation. Have those chosen ahead of time. And I even have... Julie, is it you that sends the questions out ahead of time? There's one of my Flourish leaders was telling me recently, she chooses a couple questions, she sends them out ahead of time to her group and lets them know this is what we're talking about, so that if they haven't gotten all of the work done, they can at least make sure they're prepared to answer those 2 questions. And then that also keeps people coming, because a lot of times if people haven't done the work, they just don't show up because they're embarrassed to say they didn't do the work, right? So they say, oh, I can't be there. But if you say, hey, we're going to talk about these 2 questions, most people can do that, right? They can answer those 2 questions even if they can't answer all 10 questions because the weeks got away from them. So choose a couple of good questions in advance. And then finally, communication, right? Communication is huge, and communication is an area that's really easy to not be good at, right? Because we get busy, for me, like Kelly Barton texted me yesterday afternoon and I never responded to her. And this morning I remembered and I saw her and I said, Kelly, I'm so sorry I forgot to respond. It's just easy. It's easy to not communicate, right? And so, not only do we need to communicate, but err on the side of over communication, all right? When you're in your group, when you're at your group meeting, decide what's going to happen for the next group meeting. If there's any details that need to be worked out, a lot of you are meeting the same time, the same place. You don't really need to work out details. But if there are any details that need to be worked out, decide them at your group meeting, communicate them at that group meeting, and then email them out within 24 hours for anyone who wasn't at the group. Or if everyone was there, just email it out as a reminder so that people can plan for the next time. And then also reach out in between meetings. I think that probably one of the biggest differences in groups that connect really well and groups that don't connect really well are groups that talk to each other at the meeting and in between meetings, right? Because conversations are what lead to relationships. When you can connect with someone on a personal level and not just talking about the Bible study, that's really what begins to build relationships, okay? And we recommend, really figure out what works best for your group. Texting, for my generation, texting is the best option. If it's phone calling for you, get on the phone and call. If it's email, email. If it's a Facebook group, start a Facebook group. Okay, so whatever it is that works best for your group, use that avenue, okay? We recommend texting because it seems to be where we get the best responses, but do what works for your group. Okay, so speaking of conversations leading to relationships, step 5 as a good leader and how to lead a group effectively is to foster connection. Okay, community groups are about connection. And if we're not connecting with our groups, if you're not connecting with your group, you're not going to come, right? If you show up to your group, never make any connections, you're probably not going to keep coming back. So it's our job as leaders to foster connections between the people in our group. And there are a few different ways that we can make connection within our groups. The first way is through conversation. So we recommend that you start every group meeting with a conversation time and preferably with food, because we have seen from other churches and we've seen from our own groups here that if food is involved in the group, you are going to connect better. People connect around a table, right? You sit down, you eat, and you talk. And so this is really, really important for groups that are new coming together or groups that have added in new members, because when you're first coming together, things can be awkward if you don't know each other. That's not always the case, but it can be. And at least it's a fear that a lot of us have, is that it's going to be awkward, right? And so by being intentional about helping people connect over conversation, you eliminate some of those potential frustrations or fears. So I have a couple of different ideas for connection, and one is to share our stories. And there's an easy way to do that through conversation questions. Conversation questions, we're going to put these on our group portal, but also you can just Google them, conversation questions. If Gathering has tons and tons and tons on their website under If Table, and it's just simple questions. Some of them are easy, like one of the summer questions on If was, what's your favorite flavor of ice cream and why? Okay, so you can share your favorite flavor, but you also share why, and maybe it's a childhood memory you have of making homemade ice cream, and someone else says, oh, we used to make homemade ice cream too, and so it's an easy way to connect. You could also do a game like 2 Truths and a Lie, where you tell people 3 things about yourself, 2 are true, 1's not, and they have to guess which one. Okay, so they have to guess which one is the lie. So these are just easy ways to connect, to get conversation flowing. And then also laughing together connects people immediately, right? I see Rusty and Brenda laughing at Jim, and I know they're connected in their group, right? So laugh together. Do Minute to Win It games. Did any of y'all ever watch that game show, Minute to Win It? Y'all know what I'm talking about? So it's these funny little games. They all take 1 minute, but they get people laughing, okay? And you can find all of those online as well, or just other icebreakers. You can Google icebreakers. There's all kinds of icebreakers that you can do, and they get people laughing, all right? So laughing and conversation build connection. So then the second way that you connect is through Bible study, and we want to recommend that if you're a co-ed group, for part of your group time, try to break out into gender groups, all right? If you're a group that's, all widows, and maybe there's one husband in that group that's leading, you might not break out into gender groups because it would be, 7 women and 1 man. You can't really do that. But if you have a group that's, women and men, try to break out into gender groups, whether that's for your discussion or whether that's for prayer request time, all right? So we're going to start with pre-chosen questions like we talked about earlier. Jim also touched on this in the first session. They need to be open-ended and thought-provoking, and they need to lead the discussion, right? And then don't be afraid of silence. And remember that you don't have to be the expert. And I feel like these can kind of go hand in hand. Because when no one's talking, we feel like it's our job to fill the silence, right? And so we start answering the question ourselves. Or we start rambling because we feel awkward, that no one's talking. But y'all, silence is good because, for one, it gives people time to think. Some people can't think when someone's talking. And so sometimes they need that silence to think. And then also, if you're quiet for long enough, someone's going to speak up eventually, right? It doesn't have to be you, and it may give a person a chance to talk who doesn't normally speak up in your group, okay? Okay, and then be a good listener, okay? We listen to understand. Don't hear something that they say and then stop listening and be preparing your response. We do this a lot, right? We hear something that somebody says, and it makes us think of something, and then we quit listening to what they've said so that we can prepare our thought for how we're going to respond. Don't do that. That's not a healthy way to lead a group. It's not a healthy way to be a member of a group. Listen to hear what they have to say and to understand. And then the third way we connect within our groups is to pray together. Again, this is a great time to break out into your gender groups if you haven't done that for discussion. And you just figure out a way that works for your group for prayer. Jim was telling me about something that he's done in one of his groups where everybody writes their prayer request down, they throw it in the middle, and then everyone grabs a prayer request, and they pray for that person for the whole week. That's their prayer partner for the week. So they're praying for that person all week long. You can also go around the room and give requests. Someone can write them down and then email them out the next day. Okay, so that y'all can all be praying for each other throughout the week. But prayer requests and praying together is a great way to foster connection within your group. And then also, we want to connect outside of group, right? We want to have dinners together. We want to do service projects together, maybe go to concerts. I know a lot of y'all went to a concert together recently. I saw a lot of people from church posting Sandersons and Kewingtons and Allens. I saw a lot of y'all at a concert together, right? So plan fun outings together outside of your group meeting. And then also, I think as a group leader, it's really a good idea to meet up with your people one-on-one, or if it's a co-ed group and it's couples, maybe the husband and wife leaders, take out another couple in your group. Just spend some time one-on-one, because that also really fosters connection, helps us get to know each other better. And then finally, the last step for leading a successful group is to just let God handle it, right? You do your best. You organize and you facilitate. You provide a warm environment. You make sure that you're prepared. You communicate and you over-communicate. And you offer connection points, right? And if you've done those things and you're in prayer for your group and you're following Jesus, if you've done all of those things, you've done all you can do, right? You've done what you can do. Some groups are going to connect and mesh really well, and some groups aren't. Raise your hand if you've ever been a part of a group that meshed really well. Okay, hands down. Raise your hand if you've ever been a part of a group that didn't mesh really well, right? Some groups do and some groups don't. So you have to remember, you do your part, you do the best that you can. If your group doesn't mesh, it doesn't mean you aren't leading well. It just means that group of people, the dynamic just maybe is a little off. Or maybe it means that you need to refer back to your notes and do some of these things that we talked about today. But ultimately, it's up to God to grow our groups. And so that is what you need to remember as you work on leading your groups effectively.
We are 30 minutes ahead of schedule. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to come back and start at 9:10. That's about 4 minutes and however many seconds. All right? 9:10. 9:10. just start. 30 seconds, everybody. 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. I don't know. I can't think that fast. Yeah, well. Okay, let me make a couple of comments on a couple of points that Jennifer made just to clarify for you. First, she said that you can choose your own material for your groups, but please let us know. And I just want you to know that we ask you to let us know, not just because we're curious, but because we keep the elders informed as to what is being studied. And we feel like we have an obligation to make sure that what is being talked about in our groups is biblical and right and good. And it may have been that you heard of a great study from somebody, but it's not that great a study. And we might ask you to not do that study. So you have a lot of freedom and flexibility, but we want to be able to vet that material, and it's just something that we ask. And I think the elders expect it, and so we don't apologize for that. The second thing is that she said, if Keith and Greg ask the whole church to do something, and if we do, we ask you to do it. And the reason is because we sit in elders meetings and we talk about spiritual formation and spiritual growth and what we can do. And sometimes we and the elders say, what if we collectively as a church all study the same thing? And so it's not just that Greg and Keith have some great idea. It's that all of us as the spiritual leaders have decided that something is good for the church. And we don't do that often, but when we do, we ask you to do that. And we always get pushed back, and groups say, well, yeah, but we're doing something else. And we just say, would you put that on pause so that as a church we can all do something? And we don't have anything planned for that, but we've done that in the past. We may do that in the future. And I just want you to know that that your elders are intimately concerned for your soul and for the souls of our church. And so we are, anyway. The final thing she said, Jennifer, I won't say it's the most important thing you said, but it's up there, is food. North Point Church did a study of 1,000 small groups, 1,000. And in the survey, they said, is your group successful or was your group unsuccessful? These were leaders and participants and people, right? And what they found is that when they took all that data, there were two things that were clear correlations. That groups with food were successful, and every group that wasn't successful didn't have food. Now, that seems so weird to me, but it's not. And if you say, well, yeah, but we're just a bunch of guys, we don't cook, fine. Go buy Reese's peanut butter cups and put them on the table. I mean, there's cheap and easy food that you can have, but I would hope at Christ Church we would never, ever, 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 never, 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 ever, never have another group that doesn't have something that we can put in our mouth and eat. And if you want that, like Nick, to be healthy, buy healthy food. I don't care. Somebody will eat it. I'm not eating it. Nick will eat it. Take the extra to Nick. Okay, all of us have been in groups that have a difficult person. And some of us have been in difficult groups. And It was just last year when Jennifer called and said, we've got a real problem in one of our groups, and we had to step in and do a little bit of intervention there. So if you have a group that you think is struggling, reach out to us. We'll do all we can to help you. And if you have a person in your group who is causing the group to not function the way the group should function, let us know and we'll do what we can in Christ's love and everything else. We handle that situation with as much grace as could be handled. But we will do, you don't have to do that. We will be happy to help you to facilitate healthy groups. So, with that in mind, session 3 is how to keep your groups healthy and what happens if they're not. Session 3. This is the overtalker. He's the guy that just talks and talks and talks. No, just kidding.
Don't worry, sir. We'll find out who killed your small group.
What's your connection with this group?
If telling long stories that aren't related to the topic, that never really go anywhere and don't have a point, I mean, if that's a crime.
If he wants me to read a Bible verse, it's going to be in Greek.
You want dirt? Because I got dirt. Overly emotional?
Oh, this coffee is awful. It tastes worse than Kathy's 7-layer bean dip. Ugh.
That was my mother's 7-layer bean dip recipe.
You know, this whole thing reminds me of a funny story.
I should have been the leader. I'm the only one with 9 hours of seminary under my belt.
I don't know how you can do this to me. Especially now, after the horrible accident.
I was like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel.
I mean, how am I supposed to know that you can overwater tulips?
The chair's horrible. There's no lumbar support.
Tell me!
There's nothing wrong with posting their personal stuff on my Facebook status.
They say there are no wrong answers or stupid questions.
Who thought mustard was going to be a good color?
Have you met my group?
It's not comforting. I'm not comforted by this lighting.
Is this over-emotional? Is this over-emotional?
Bad theology? I got it from Wikipedia.
Mom, I mean, how gross is it that our own small group leader, Dave, wants us to pray for his rash?
If I didn't talk, our whole group would just sit there in silence. I mean, how awkward is that? I hate silence!
Amazing grace.
You know who you should be talking to? That's Dave.
When I get emotional, I chew on my hair.
I know you're back there, Dave, with your confused look and your arms crossed. You were the leader, Dave. You were supposed to lead, but you didn't. And we're dead because of you.
Okay, if it was you, don't say anything. You heard it. Full confession.
Okay, raise your hand if you have ever been in a group with one of those people. Okay, hands down. Okay, raise your hand if you have ever been one of those people. Right? We all have to some extent, right? Okay, and you're laughing, but we can all relate to one of those people. So here's the deal, y'all. Small groups can be challenging because small groups are made up of people, right? And people are challenging, and we're not perfect, and we're really messed up, which is the whole point of why we're here, is because Jesus came for us messed up people, right? He came to take the messed up people and to make them saints, right? Okay? So We saw the 6 types. We saw 6 types of people. I bet you could probably make a list of 6 more, okay? We saw all kinds of difficult people. I've actually added one to this list that I have personally seen, and I call this one the hijacker. And the hijacker, we touched on this in the know-it-all when he says, I should have been the leader of this group. But the hijacker takes it a step further and actually tries to take over the group, right? They manipulate. It may be unintentional or it may be very intentional because they think that they would be a better leader. But either way, it's awkward, it's noticeable. You see what's happening, your group sees what's happening, and it's a problem, right? And so what we know, all right, is that we can't control people, right? We all know that. If you've been a parent, you know that you can't control people because you have these small people that you want to try to control and you can't. But there are 2 things that we can control. And the first thing is how we set our group up for success. And the second thing that we can control is our response to problems when and if they arrive, right? Okay, so we're going to talk now about setting our groups up for success. And I touched on this in session 2 where we talked about making a plan. And we're going to go in depth into making a plan for your group now. It's really important to have a group plan and group guidelines. Okay, these are 2 separate things that you're going to want to have, but your group plan, we originally, when I originally was writing this, I called it group expectations, but decided to change the word from expectations to plan because plan is a friendlier word than expectations. But these are really kind of your group expectations, okay? And the group plan addresses logistics of how the group is going to run, and your group guideline addresses acceptable and unacceptable behaviors within your group, okay? So you've got 2 different documents here. And really these things are the reason they're in existence is to help prevent frustration related to the group function and the group dynamics. And it's really, really important to make sure that everyone in your group has a copy of the plan. Now, your plan is something that you're going to determine, okay? You're going to determine your plan. Group guidelines have really already been determined for you, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. You may want to tweak those some, but that's what we are recommending to be the guidelines for your group. And you do have, if right now you're on page... Session 3, dealing with challenges, but if you flip the page, you're going to see a worksheet for group planning, and then a one called worksheet group recommended guidelines. Okay, and again, it's recommended, but we do feel like these are good guidelines for your groups. So we're going to talk about we're going to kind of go through the group planning worksheet right now. We're going to talk about that. So you see 5 P's. The first P is prayer, all right? Oh, let me say before I get into this, if your group is already in existence, you may be functioning beautifully. You may not feel the need for this. And as far as I'm concerned, Greg may have something different to say, but as far as I'm concerned, you may not need to work through this plan, okay? Your group may be doing great. But if your group is struggling, or if you're putting a new group together, you should definitely go through this plan. And honestly, it's a great idea to go through it with your group, especially if your group is already in existence. If you're putting a group together, you could go through, and you already have people, you could go through it with that group and determine what's going to work best for your group, or you could go through it with your co-leaders and kind of figure out what's going to work best for your group. Okay, 5 P's. First P is prayer. This is your first step, obviously. The first thing you're going to do is pray about your group. You're going to be in prayer for your group leading up to it. And when you sit down to work through this group planning worksheet, start by asking the Holy Spirit to guide you as you discern the best plan for your group. Okay, we always want to start with prayer. Then we're going to look at our purpose. Why does your group exist? You're literally asking yourself this question. Why does our group exist? Why are we here? Are we here for Bible study? Are we a roller skating club? Are we here just for socializing? Or are we, now most of us in here are Bible, accountability, social groups, all of those together, right? But we have had groups in the past that have been more like, a quilting group or things like that. They come together for a specific purpose that is less about the study and more about something else. So ask your group, why do you exist? We recommend that you're a combination of Bible study, social, and accountability, right? That's what most of our groups are looking like. Then you're going to look at your program, which is where and when will you meet, okay? Are you going, look at the dates and times, how regularly you're going to meet, which we talked about in the last session. Are you weekly? Are you every other week? Weekly is great. It's kind of what is recommended if you can do weekly, but we know the reality of the situation. Our Flourish groups, most of them meet every other week because we've got a lot of working women, a lot of working moms, and it's hard for us to commit to something every single week with, especially if we're in a co-ed group or another group as well. So think about what the expectation is going to be for when you're going to meet, how often you're going to meet. Also, think about punctuality and ending time. Those are important. Like if your group starts showing up, like Greg said, our services start on the dot, right? We don't wait around for people to show up, because if we did, they would just start showing up later, right? I stand on that stage 50% of the year, and that first song, there's not many people. By the time they stand up to preach, it's full, okay? So if we don't start on time, it's just gonna get later and later. And then it's really important to have a strict ending time. The question says here, what will be your strict ending time? It's not will you have one, but you need to have one out of respect for your host. Even if it's not at the leader's house, whoever's hosting, we need to have a strict ending time. And also, because if it goes on and on and on, people aren't going to want to stay, right? They're going to quit coming to group because they never know when they're going to get out of there. And then talk about hosting duties, okay? Is the leader also the host? Are you rotating houses? Are you meeting at the church? Okay, figure that out. Something you need to figure out as a part of this worksheet. And then you need to talk about practices. What's the plan for your meetings? Are you going to have food or not? That question's been answered for us. Greg said you will have food, right? Even if Nick buys a bag of Kit Kats. Y'all, Nick is a healthy eater, but he loves himself a Kit Kat. So maybe Nick buys a bag of Kit Kats for his guys group, all right? Then talk about how much time is going to be allotted for the different sections of your group. Because if we're not careful, we can eat and talk for an hour and a half and realize we don't have any time left for Bible study, right? So make a plan, a tentative plan. We're going to spend 30 minutes eating. We're going to spend 45 minutes on Bible study, and we're going to spend 30 minutes on prayer, okay? Sure, that can change as needed based on the needs of your groups on that particular night, but kind of have a set plan that you try to stick to, okay? All right, and then who leads the discussion? Is the group leader going to lead the discussion every time? Or are you going to take turns within your group? Some of our groups have a lot of leaders in them, right? They have a lot of people that want to discuss and want to lead. And so figure that out as a group. And also, these things can change and evolve over time, right? Maybe the leader starts out leading, but then later says, hey, would you be willing to lead next week, okay? So kind of figure that out in advance. And then people. Our final P is people. What are the clearly defined roles of both group leaders and group members? Some examples of the leader role could be their job is to facilitate and coordinate the group, to communicate, to be prepared, and to lead the discussion as needed. Okay, and then some expectations of the member might be to attend regularly, to be prepared for group, to participate in the discussion, to contribute to the group hospitality, which would be maybe bringing food or hosting, and then to possibly take turns leading discussion. So these are just some things for y'all to think about as you're thinking about what are the people in your group, what's their job going to be. All right, and then we are going to go ahead and flip over to your group guidelines page, your recommended guidelines. Like I said, we've predetermined these based on our recommendations. If you need to make any tweaks, you can. And feel free to come up and ask us about those tweaks as well. Like if you feel like, hey, I'd like to make this change. Do you think this is okay? Again, Greg may have more to speak into this, but this is what Jim and I have kind of really talked about and determined are some good, what we feel are good guidelines for our groups. So, and a reminder, the worksheet, the planning worksheet we just did, if you don't work through it with your group, after you have worked through it with your co-leader, take it to your group and say, hey, these are our expectations. If you work through it with your group, write down all the notes you made, put it in a document, and share it with your group so that everyone knows, everyone's on the same page, and they know what time you're starting, what time you're ending, just where it's going to be, all that kind of stuff. Give it to them ahead of time. It's so important for people to have this information so that, we all know if we have clear expectations from the beginning, the group's going to be more successful. We're going to know what's expected of us, right? So just make sure they have a copy of that. Okay, moving on to the guidelines. Again, share these up front. If you're starting your group, share these from the beginning. If your group's already in place, use September with our relaunch of groups. Use that as a time to say, hey, these are some guidelines that have been given to us by the group's ministry, okay? So let's work through these. I'm not gonna, the top part you can read yourself. It just says our reasons for having guidelines, but we're gonna talk through each of the 6 points. The first thing that's important in our groups is discretion. All right, what we say in the group stays in the group. And I think most of us know that. Some people struggle more with sharing things than sharing things outside of the group than they need to. But this is just something that's foundational. If it's said in the group, it stays in the group. The only exception to that would be if there is a scriptural or a legal reason that something needs to be shared. If someone has confessed something to you or something within the group that is spiritually not okay or legally not okay, you're gonna need to bring that to us, okay? To me and Jim, to Greg and Keith. Well, if it's legal, bring it to us and we'll go. If it's legal, you have to do what you know is the right thing to do, but that's the caveat, okay? I'm not gonna keep talking about that, but you understand what I'm saying, right? Okay, so then we're gonna move on to interaction. Interaction is to be brief and stick to the point as you share your thoughts, okay? This helps with the over-talker kind of thing. If we tell our groups, hey, we're gonna be brief, when you share, try to keep it to 2 minutes, you could say something like that. Again, this is a starting point that you decide for your group. Let your people know that they need to be aware of how often they're contributing and ask them to not dominate the group conversation. All of these things that we're telling you here are to help prevent you from having to have hard conversations later down the road, okay? So if you give your people this up front, they know, hey, this is what it's expected. I need to be careful not to dominate the conversation, all right? And then allow others to finish their thoughts without interrupting them, okay? That's just common courtesy, but sometimes we need to say that. And some people interrupt without meaning to. I find myself doing that from time to time. I get so excited about what somebody's saying, and I'm like, yeah. And then I realize when I stop talking, they go back and finish what they were saying, and I'm like, oh, I just totally interrupted you, and that wasn't my intention. And so that's one of our guidelines, is don't interrupt. The next point is connection, and really what we're talking about here, this is to address people who aren't getting along well, okay? This is to hopefully preempt any of that not getting along within the group. In our political climate right now, there's so many opinions, there's so many thoughts. We are a very diverse church with lots of different thoughts and ideas. And so this section is kind of for that, all right? So we always listen respectfully to others with the goal of understanding. If you disagree with a thought or opinion shared, pause and think about whether you need to respond to that, okay? Just because you disagree doesn't mean you need to say that you disagree. Even if it's like a theological or biblical thing, even if they're saying something wrong, that doesn't mean you need to correct them, right? If you have to respond, be gentle and respectful. Don't argue during group discussion period. And then respect the time, finances, commitments, and boundaries of group members. Then we go down to clarification, and that says, rather than make assumptions about a person's thoughts or beliefs, ask clarifying questions. Sometimes in these kind of groups, it's easy to kind of judge a person based on what you think about them, about preconceived notions, and don't. Just ask questions. Try to understand who they are. Participation, the group is a safe place for everyone to share thoughts and ask questions, and all members are strongly encouraged to participate in group discussion. And then finally, a submission, and that just really says that all group members are expected to submit to the guidelines that are in place, all right? We just basically means these are the guidelines we're asking you to follow the guidelines, right? So the point of the plan and the point of the guidelines are to keep problems from happening. But we know, again, people are people, and sometimes our plans and guidelines aren't going to work, okay? So what do we do when problems arise? Again, this is the most important thing. This is proactive. You've given this to them, but then if problems arise, let your guidelines be your guide, okay? You can go back and point to the guidelines and say, hey, this is what we talked about in the beginning. And as needed, you can go back and you can read your guidelines at the beginning of your meetings. Probably not every meeting. I know Regen, they do every single meeting. They say what the guidelines are for that meeting. I don't know what they call it, but it's the same kind of thing. And so you could do that at each meeting or as needed, right? So for the first step, if you're having problems, redirect the discussion back to the main point. And we're talking about problems really like within your group meetings, okay? So like if there's an overtalker, all right, or someone who goes off on tangents a lot, just thank them for their thoughts and direct them back to the main point, okay? You can give a reminder of time restraints and say, this is a great conversation. We only have 15 minutes left, so let's try to get back to this question that we were talking about, politely redirecting. And you can also give an opportunity to continue the discussion later. I would love to talk with you more about that. Let's talk about that. Let's set up a phone date and we can talk more about that, okay? And then if that doesn't work, then the second step would be to give a general group reminder, maybe at the beginning of the next meeting, okay? That would be a good time to read over your guidelines. You could also single out the specific issue that's happening over and over. So like if it's talking too much, getting off on tangents like the example we just used, you could say, hey, just a reminder, we only have 45 minutes for discussion, so I'd like to ask you to try to limit any thought that you want to share to 2 minutes. And if you've already shared a couple times, just try to give other people an opportunity to share before you share again. And by saying this at the beginning, you're not hurting people's feelings or embarrassing them because you're saying it up front, right? Okay, and then if it continues to happen, the third step would be to talk to the person or people privately, okay? And we never, ever, ever want to embarrass people in front of others. I mean, that seems very obvious, but there's a couple reasons for that. The obvious reason is that we just don't want to hurt the person's feelings, okay? So we don't want to embarrass them. But also, if you embarrass someone in front of other people, it communicates to the other members of the group, don't talk or he may embarrass you too, okay? So like don't say too much or you might be the one that gets embarrassed. So it's communicating, it's unkind to the person that you're embarrassing, and it's also hurting your group because those people are going to close their mouths and not be as invested, all right? Okay, so also, if you have to go and talk to a person privately, you want to keep the issue, you want to keep the conversation about the issue at hand, the behavior that's happening, not the person, not who they are. So the issue or the action would be that they're talking too much. So when you talk to them, just say, hey, we need to give other people a chance to talk. Or this could be the manipulative person who's trying to take over the group. If you have to talk to them in person, you want to keep it about what they're doing, not about who they are. Hey, I feel disrespected when you do this, not you're a manipulative person and you need to stop that, right? We keep it about what they're doing, not who they are, okay? And that's not who they are. That's not who they may struggle with that, but they're a child of God. That's not who they are, okay? And we don't want to identify them as that. And then remind them why we're at the group. Hey, we're here to connect. We're here to grow closer to God. That's why we're here. Keep it, bring it back around to the purpose. And then the fourth step is that if talking to the person privately, respectfully doesn't help, come to me or Jim and talk to us about it. Let us know what's going on. Like Greg said, we had this issue I think in January with one of our Flourish groups, and we had to address a major problem in a group. And so I'm so thankful that those leaders came to me. At first, they did a great job. They did all of these things, and that's kind of where I got some of this from, was partially how they handled it. And then they came to us and they said, hey, this is the problem that we're having. And we're like, oh, that is a problem. I took it to Greg and Keith. we worked it out and we figured out how to handle it. So if you're having problems, come to us and we will help you, because we have walked through this kind of stuff before and we can give you pointers. And again, everything is going to be handled on a case-by-case basis, okay? So just come talk to us and we will help you. And it's really important to remember that you can do hard things, because I know most of you are sitting in here thinking, but I don't want to have those kind of conversations, right? No one enjoys that. It's not fun. It's awkward. It's hard, okay? But you cannot forsake the health of your group for your own personal comfort, right? If you have a person that's causing problems in your group will fall apart. It will not be able to stay together if someone is causing major problems. And it even tells us in the Bible, if we need a little bit more reminding that is the right thing to do, it tells us, if your brother or sister is sinning, you go to them, you talk to them. If they don't change, bring someone else with you and talk to them again. That's exactly what you're doing. You talk to them. If it doesn't get better, you come to us and we work on it with you. Okay, so we're following Matthew 18 when we do that. And if you ever have to ask yourself the question, do I need to let Jim or Jennifer know about this? The answer is yes, okay? If you even have to ask yourself the question of should we know? Yes, we should know, okay? Because we are here to help you. That's why we're here. All right, so let's get practical quickly. What are some type of problems that may arise? First, people not getting along. We talked about that. That's why the section on connection exists, because that's to help with the potential of people not getting along. Usually this is an opposing personality type or opposing viewpoints. And if something, the solution to this is probably oversimplified, but it is a solution. If it's uncomfortable and causing problems in your group, address it separately with each of the people involved in the interpersonal issue. Remind them that we're here to become more like Jesus. We're not here to argue with each other. And if someone comes to you with a complaint about a group member, point back to that Matthew 18 and just say, hey, go talk to him. You go talk to them. And again, all of this is you're using your best judgment. But if there are issues between people in your group, encourage them to work it out first. And if they can't work it out, then we'll go to the next step. Another common problem is, that's not necessarily a common problem. This is more of a common problem. People not connecting. And this is more of a problem when new groups start up or new people come in. Because new people, they want to be known and they want to get to know people. So we really need to be vigilant about this when new people come into our group. Remember those connection points we talked about, conversation questions, things like that. Make sure. You may have moved out of doing that because your group knows each other well and you don't need those anymore, but maybe that would be a time to bring that back around if you have new people in your group. This can also be an issue if the leader is too intent on the Bible study part and not giving enough time for connection. So make sure you're giving enough time for connection every week at every meeting. People not committing. This is a problem I've seen a lot as a leader in the church. I've seen a lot of people not committing, and in the groups that I've been in, I've seen people not committing. And the problem here really is you might get frustrated, and your group members that are committed may also get frustrated, because when people are in and out, you don't get a chance to know them well. You don't know if you can trust them, so you may not feel comfortable sharing. So it does cause a problem when people are in and out and not fully committed. So I think that the solution to this is to, talk to that person and just say, hey, we really miss you. Our group is better when you're here. And you can also find out what's keeping them from being able to be a committed part of the group and see if you can help them come up with creative solutions for being able to be at the group. Maybe it's a childcare issue. Maybe they're working too late and maybe you could change your group time, or, there's different things that you can do to try to help people be able to be there. This is another issue. You may have people in your group struggling with mental or emotional health. It's important for you to remember that you are not their counselor. There are very few licensed professional counselors sitting in this room right now, okay? So that is not who you are. So remember that. If there's an issue with mental or emotional health, come and talk to me or Jim. We can refer people for counseling on a case-by-case basis. We can either just give you the name of someone, or if it's a situation where people can't afford to get counseling but it's really needed on a case-by-case basis, sometimes we can help with the finances for that. You may also have people in your group who just have consistently messy lives, or they just kind of thrive on drama, okay? We see this from time to time. And everyone, here's what I'm not saying. Everybody has a mess in their life from time to time, right? We all have problems from time to time, and that's not what we're talking about. Really, that's what our community groups are for. Like, we are the church. We're pastoral care units, okay? So if there's someone in your group who has lost a family member or is struggling through a really a serious illness, that's an opportunity for you to come around them as a group and help them where they need help, encourage them, provide for them in ways that they need. But if it becomes too much for you to handle, then please let us know and what we can do to help you with that. What we are talking about is when a person is just, their life is just consistently messy. Maybe they're making bad choices over and over. Maybe they just embrace drama. Maybe they go looking for situations that are going to be difficult. We know people like that, right? So a lot of times these people are oversharing and dominating the conversation in the group, especially the people that really love drama. And so redirecting people's messes to sharing maybe at prayer request time, if they're oversharing during the discussion, just say, man, sounds like that's really hard on you. We'll take a few minutes during prayer time so you can tell us exactly how we can be praying for you. And as we talked about above, as I just talked about, help when you can and as appropriate, but it's not always appropriate to keep offering help, right? But you can refer them to the appropriate pastors. Steve and Judy help a lot with benevolence. You can refer them to us and we can get them to the right place, okay? And if you need to, if it comes to it, set boundaries for your group. Talk to that person and say, man, we're so sorry that you're dealing with this. I wish that there was more than we could do to help. And, maybe you need to tell them, hey, we wish we could, but we can't solve all of your problems. And if they're cornering people and asking for help, whether that's financially or if they're making people feel awkward, just say, hey, we're not going to do that here. Let's connect. Let's see where we can connect you with organizations that might be able to help you, okay? And finally, those things were kind of scary, but don't let these potential challenges scare you, okay? The things that I just talked about, if you have dealt with one of those issues in your group, raise your hand. Raise them high. I want us to be seen. Okay, so maybe half of this room has dealt with those serious issues. They're all still here today leading groups, right? So clearly the issues weren't scary enough that they hung up their hat and said, no more. They're still here, right? Because the issues, we know that it's important, that we are serving God and that we are building the kingdom through our service, right? And so they really aren't that typical, though, because half of our room didn't raise their hands, okay? So it's nothing to be scared of. You are here because you are a good leader. And I just want to say, make sure you understand to never hesitate to reach out to me or Jim or Greg or Keith if you have questions or if you just need a pep talk, because we are here to help you.
Okay, any questions that you have about that? Anything that has come up?
It's a lot of information, I know. And I know a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, my group doesn't need this, my group gets along great. And that's wonderful.
Any questions? Okay, so let me say two things. First, it's 2022, which means that it's not a big election year, it's a little election year. And let me just remind you that if you are a Republican, you will likely have Democrats in your group. And God loves them. Yeah, somebody said not for long. That's the problem. Listen, I'm going to say this really firmly because I just believe it so strongly. Jesus Christ didn't come to save Republicans. We're here to teach the gospel to Republicans and Democrats and people who don't care about politics, and people who care way too much about politics. We're not in the political business. We're in the gospel kingdom business. And we are members, we are members of the kingdom, God's kingdom. And God's kingdom is not divided by politics. And we're in a political year, and it's going to talk. Look, if this were 2024 and a presidential year, I would really get on a soapbox, because that's when it gets a lot worse. But some of your groups love to talk about politics. Zip it. It's just not the place. Go to lunch and talk all you want about politics. But your groups are about the gospel. And kingdom people can have differences of opinion about worldly politics. But remember, Republican Party is a worldly party controlled by the evil one. And the Democratic Party is a worldly party controlled by the evil one. And there are godly people in both parties. Okay, enough of my soapbox. But please don't turn your small group into a political soapbox, all right? Because all you're going to do is alienate people who disagree with you but don't want to speak up because they just don't, all right? Can we do that? Number 2, if you need to have a hard conversation, come see me. I have hard conversations a lot, and I'm sometimes good at them. Sometimes I'm not so good, but I don't mind having them. I have them a lot. It's part of my job. Number 3. Number 3, can we thank Andrew for being here so that we can see what we see? And Andrew, as always, you're awesome. Few people work as hard and are as important to what we do as Andrew Tripp. And that guy, he doesn't get paid enough, and he just is a superstar at our church. Andrew, you're fantastic. Number 4. Up in Montana, they were having problems with bears, and so they put out this public service notice, and they said, if you're out on a walk or otherwise in the woods or in the wilderness, you need to be aware of bears, and we highly recommend that you do a couple of things that can help you. First, you put on little bells, and that way you don't startle the bears when you're walking through the forest. And number 2, that you carry pepper spray so that if a bear does come, you can at least repel them the best that you can. And it would be very helpful if you could understand, if you see signs of bears, if you could understand which bear it is, because there are brown bears and there are grizzly bears, and you can tell best out in the wilderness because brown bears have this poop that's small and round, and it smells like berries and maybe have some squirrel fur in it. And the grizzly bears have little bells and smell like pepper. We're 35 minutes ahead. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back with session 4. 5 minutes. That's at 3 minutes until the hour.
Curriculum needs to be run by y'all, because that was what I wanted to say, but I wasn't sure if that was accurate. And so I'm glad you said that, because I didn't know. I asked Jim, I was like, is it too far to say that we get to approve everyone's curriculum? And he felt like it was, but that's good. I'm glad you said that. I should have asked you about it before.
Well, when I heard you say it, I thought, I wanted you to say it, and I knew you were close.
Yeah,
so
that's what I wanted to say, but I
know.
Yeah.
I just thought I'll just clarify.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you did.
Because the people who, a lot of people just expect that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Should expect.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of phrases.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, you probably do. All right, it's time to get started. And okay. All right, we are on session 4 of 4, and we are going to have a little bit at the end. So this won't be the final last thing that we say, but it will be close to it. And what we wanted to do is just take this last session to talk about, we've talked in general about groups. We want to talk about groups at Christ Church, your groups, and groups like yours, and groups that you may choose to form this year or in coming years. And so the groups are always, just by definition, groups are a work in progress. And yours is too. They morph, they change, they get better. And so that's, so there's really nothing today that we're going to say, this is, the thing, but it is the best thought as of today. Because I believe, that spiritual formation doesn't happen on Sundays. It's just my opinion. My opinion is, my theology behind that is that Sundays are a day for God. That we come to worship Him and learn about Him, and it's really not about me, it's about Him. And every good Sunday is a Sunday that is focused on Him and about Him. And even when we teach and preach, we try to teach and preach about Him and about how we can follow Him better. And groups are the best way for us to then grow in our spiritual walk. And so we've asked Jim to just come up and share with us some thoughts about groups at Christ Church. And in between points number 1 and points number 2, I'm going to actually interrupt him and come back. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the esteemed. You're supposed to be walking up as I say this. Come on. Oh, you're showing a video. Never mind.
Are you tired of small groups always getting into your business? Trying to get you to share your feelings, discuss your past, confess your sins? Are you just looking for a place to kick it, network, maybe get some free grub? Me too. That's why I created what I believe to be the world's first openly shallow small group. We're not here to deal with messy stuff like feelings and emotions. You got problems? You deal with them. You're an adult. Life ain't easy, so stop the pity party. We all have our issues. We don't really want to do life together. Frankly, at Shallow Small Group, we try not to do much of anything at all. You'll never hear us use the term, unpack that thought. We're sure it's packed away for a really good reason. And you'll never hear us use the term accountability unless you're talking about someone who deals with numbers. Hey dude, thanks for doing my taxes. You have great accountability. And spiritual growth. Who wants growth? I had a growth removed last week. It wasn't pleasant. There's no pressure here to remember each other's name.
What's going on, buddy?
Oh, hey man, how's it going?
That's going good.
Hey, Chief. Oh, dude.
Captain, what's going on?
We know you have a name, and that's the important thing. Group discussion? You got tickets to the big game? Sweet. Let's spend some time on that. Oh, you and your wife are struggling financially? There's tension in the relationship? That's not really the vibe we're going for. We avoid conflict like the plague.
Who wants cake? Come on and get it!
And there will never, ever be an awkward silence. That's our guarantee to you. We hate bad theology as much as the next guy, and we know the surest way to prevent bad theology is to avoid theology altogether.
And outreach? This is the only outreach you'll ever have to do.
Some people say we're superficial, but hey, the word super's and superficial. I mean, who doesn't want to be super? Shallow small group, because when things get too deep, people drown. Won't you join us?
We had some extra time, so have some fun. In this session, let me mention a couple of things before I move on. One of the things we want from everybody is an updated list of who all's in your groups. And so make sure, if you're leading a group, make sure you see Jennifer before you leave, and she will have a printed list of the people that we currently show in your groups.
This is really just co-ed groups.
Just co-ed groups, okay.
We have as co-ed groups in our database. Some of this stuff is super outdated. So I'm going to give you what I have, and I need you to add the people that are in your group. Mark out people that aren't in your group, add the people that are in your group. We're going to get our database updated. If you're a flourish leader, you won't get one of these because I'm already touching base with you on that. And if you're a men's group, I don't have that. I won't be printing that out either.
So if you're in a men's group, just write the names of all the people that are in your group, particularly if it's an ongoing group, okay? If it's a group that's going to be ongoing. All right. We are going to, what we want to do this session, we have some really not so much suggestions, requests. We have some requests we would like to make of you for your groups, okay, for all of our groups at Christ Church. And before I get too deep into that, but it's kind of connected, so we put it in this session, I do want to say a little bit more about Curricula. We are, as has been stated, we're going to provide some curriculum recommendations. Here's where we're going to put those, okay? We're going to create a place on our website that's going to be a resource page for our group leaders. And so you will be able to go to that page. You'll be able to see, for example, recordings of our sessions today. You'll be able to rewatch the training sessions if you want to. Anybody that wasn't here can go to the resource page. They can watch the training sessions that we did today. We're going to have recommended books, recommended studies, and they're going to be categorized, right? Here's some recommendations if you want to do something on marriage. Here's something that we recommend on the life of Christ, or a group of studies that we recommend. So they're going to be categorized. We're going to have write-ups where we're going to describe what that curriculum looks like and kind of what you can expect from that curriculum. So we're going to try to provide some good support resources for you. And as has been stated, if you decide to do something else or you want to do something else, let us know in advance. 2 reasons for that. 1, we do want our elders and pastors to know what all of our groups are doing. And 2, when we talk to new people at our church who are looking to get connected, we want to be in the know enough that we can say, yep, here are 3 groups that are really good for you. Here's what this group is doing. Here's what this group is doing. And we can provide some up-to-date information on what's happening in our groups. Okay, so help us out there if you're to let us know what you're doing and what you plan to do with your curriculum. Let me, in your packet, there's a sheet that's just on, it's a curriculum worksheet. Let me refer you to that. Just some things I want to highlight that are on this sheet. What some of our groups do that's really very easy to do is they spend the time in their group in the kind of study, encouragement portion of their group time, talking about the Sunday sermon. That's easy to do, and Steve Allen makes this even more easy to do. You can go to the YouVersion Bible app on your phone or tablet, and if you click on events, you will see Christ Church Irving on that event list. You choose Christ Church Irving, you're going to see an outline of the Sunday sermon in advance, generally on Thursday or Friday. And not only that, but most of the time, Steve also provides some recommended discussion questions that go along with the sermon notes. So Keith shares his sermon notes in advance. Steve goes through those. He prepares that for people that want to use the Sunday sermon as a point of discussion. And Keith's sermons are always practical. And so you have things that you can focus on for learning and some great discussion questions for how to apply that teaching to your life and to lead your group in that. So for those groups, how many groups discuss the Sunday sermon right now in their group? That's the focus. So you see one table over here, so you see three different groups. That's what they do, two different groups, that's what they do in their study. If you want to do that, that's great. So I wanted to highlight that. I want to highlight Right Now Media. Andrew's going to put this up on the screen. How many people use Right Now Media in their study groups? So you see a few hands in the rooms. How many people have no idea what Right Now Media is and have no access to Right Now Media? All right, so I see several hands there. So on the screen, we have a subscription to Right Now Media that has literally tens of thousands of resources, studies, conferences, book studies, all categorized, searchable. We have a subscription that every member in our church has access to if they want it. But it's a great place for leaders to go and find curriculum ideas or resources that you want to use, or even educational material for yourself. So can you get to our channel? So we have an actual channel that's set up for Christ Church Irving. Hopefully that will come up. There we go. Scroll down just a little bit. So I just started building this a couple of days ago. So you can't see what these are called necessarily because it's too small. There we go. So I threw a couple of things in here. That first channel is called Group Curricula Bible-Based Studies. And so I just put a couple of studies from the book of James on there from Tony Evans. The next channel is called Group Curricula Apologetics. I threw a couple of books in there by Lee Strobel that are really good, The Case for Christ and The Case for Faith. The next channel is called Group Curricula General, and so you'll see several things in there. A few things from Andy Stanley, for example, at North Point Church. As a matter of fact, you'll see the curriculum and the book for Be Rich. Well, that's a series we're going to be doing that Keith's going to be teaching in the month of August. And you can preview it, and you can see that material right there. And so there are the 4 videos of Andy Stanley teaching the Be Rich series, and we're going to be going through that series in August. We have group leader training. I threw a few things in there just for you that you might want to look at that are great training resources. Right Now Media is a great resource. If you don't have access to Right Now Media, you're not sure if you have access, write your name and email address down and give it to Jennifer, and she will make sure you get an invite to Right Now Media. Okay, so I wanted to highlight that as part of our curriculum piece. I think that's good. Greg, come on up and look through the rest of that curriculum page, and we'll be continuing to communicate with you about curriculum options.
Okay, here's why I'm interrupting. Because as we were going through and I was looking at everything that Jim was going to talk about, he got to this next point. And I said, they will have been here for a long time at this point. And they may be mentally tired of listening at this point. And they may miss what you say next at this point. And what Jim says next is the most important thing that you will have heard all day. So I'm only interrupting to ask you to give Jim your full mental attention for the next couple of minutes, because this is the gold of the day.
If that's not pressure. All right. So curriculum, we're going to be supporting you and helping you out with curriculum. Okay. Next point. We want all of our groups at Christ Church to be disciple-driven groups. I'm going to go back to where I started. We want our leaders to consciously be thinking about the goal. Our goal is to help one another become more devoted followers of Jesus Christ. And to consciously think, what does that look like in my group? And become shepherds of your group. We shepherd each other within our home groups. Our elders and our pastors shepherd the overall flock, but they can't be in the lives of every individual. You know, I'm getting a little bit off my notes here, but we have 2 extra minutes. Remember Moses in the wilderness, right? He's got hundreds of thousands of people out there that he's leading. And he's trying to counsel all of these people, and his father-in-law Jethro comes to him and says, look, what you're doing's not very wise, Moses. This isn't very good. You're up morning till night, and you've got this long line of people, and all you're doing is trying to help people, and you're trying to do it yourself. What you need to do is you need to get a group of people under you and delegate that out, and then have groups of people under them and delegate that out, and have these under shepherds that can shepherd the people, and then only the biggest problems make their way that you need to deal with. Well, that's what we have to do in our church. The bigger we get as a church, the more important our small groups become. And so as leaders, what we're asking of one another as we lead groups is that we become a part of the shepherding team. And we lead our people to become more devoted followers of Jesus Christ, and we take that seriously. So that's, in keeping that in mind, here are some of the things that we want to happen. Here's what we believe it means, some of the things it means to be disciple-driven groups. 1, we want every group, as you pursue this goal of helping your people become more devoted followers of Jesus, we want every group to be also open to growth, numerical growth. We want every group to be a Matthew 28 Great Commission group. We're helping make disciples, and we're taking the message out. So what that looks like is we would like for our groups to always have eyes out for people that they're meeting in our congregation that are not connected. As you meet people that look like, hey, this person's in the same kind of phase of life that we're in as a group, make relationships and invite them to be a part of your community group. You can go outside your community group into your neighborhoods. And we also ask, because Jennifer and I and Greg and Keith and our elders are all meeting people that are coming into our church that don't have connections, we would like for all of our groups to be open to growth by us coming to you and saying, hey, here's a family that's not connected. Can we recommend your group? Can we introduce them into your group. And so we would ask that all of our groups be open to growth. One of the easy ways to do that, or ways to facilitate that, as Jennifer said in session 2, is to do these 6-week or 12-week studies, and especially have them start in September and January, because that's when we're going to be making big pushes to our congregation for new people to be a part of groups. And it's nice for them to be able to come into a group where something, the material is freshly starting at that time. That's the easiest way and place to introduce people. Second, discipleship-driven groups, we would like for your group to be open to multiplying. I didn't say dividing, I didn't say splitting, but multiplying. This is Matthew 28 again, right? We're growing, and as we grow, at some point we hit critical mass. We don't know what that number is. It's going to be different for each group. Critical mass for your group might be 15, 16 people, where you say, okay, we need to kind of form sister groups and multiply. It might be that your group gets up to 30 or 40 people. Size isn't what we care about, as long as the group can be managed where it's functioning well and is healthy. But at some point, when it reaches critical mass, we want you to be open to multiplying. The metaphor Greg suggested for this that's really good is a family, right? Families, most of the time what happens, right, is we have 2 people get married, they have kids. Those kids eventually move out of the house, and they start families of their own. But they're still a family. We're not asking you to split and lose connection. We're asking your groups to remain a family where maybe you have 2 or 3 or 4 sister groups in time. You still do things together, just like you do things with your family. You maintain that love, you maintain the relationships, you maintain the connection, but you're open to multiplication. And that's not unhealthy, that's healthy. We would look at any family and say, yes, that's healthy. And that's what's healthy in groups as well. So be open to multiplication. Third, and I'm just going to hit this quick because we've already talked about it, we want our groups to be the hub for pastoral care. As members of your group have needs, come together, take care of each other, right? If you don't do that within your groups, odds are the staff and the pastors, the elders, may never hear that that individual is suffering or has a problem, and they will fall through the cracks. That's one of the reasons we want all of our members to be connected in a group, because we need everybody to have a place where they're being shepherded and to have a place where they're being cared for. And that begins at the group level. And so I know you do this in your groups. I'm just reminding you, take care of one another. As needs arise, and if the needs are greater than what the group can support, then bring them on up the ladder and let the bigger group step in and help with those needs. Fourth point, disciple-driven groups. We want all of our groups to be a place where people share life. And so I mentioned this at the beginning. Let me talk a little bit more about it. And you have a worksheet in your packet on this. It's the last sheet in your packet. We're asking you in your group to carve out 20 minutes or so of time to have life discussions. And this is something new for a lot of our groups. And so it might seem awkward at first. You can start out with easy questions. How is God working in your life right now? What is What is your greatest weakness right now as a Christian, and how can we pray for that, support that? Or what is your greatest strength right now? Share a victory that you're having in your life right now. The point is, these are questions where people are talking about their relationship with God, their walk with God. And as the group becomes more comfortable with sharing and they're growing closer together, people will become more comfortable with other questions like, hey, what are you struggling with right now? Is there any sin that you have in your life that we as a group can pray about and know about so that we can encourage you and support you? Or who in your life are you discipling? Who are you pouring into? Who are you mentoring right now? And so there's a whole list of suggested questions. You can come up with others. The point is, we want people to have a time in group where they talk about discipleship, what's going on in their lives. And this provides encouragement, it provides intimacy, and it provides accountability. And one of the things you can do that Jennifer suggested to make this a little less awkward is you can send that question, just do a question or two at each group meeting. You can send that question or two out in advance so that people have time to think about it ahead of time, and then they're prepared to discuss. Okay? Now, for some of you, some of these may be really pretty big changes in your group. And we don't want any groups to be caught by surprise, and we want this to be the case with every beginning group as well. It's important, it's vital that you talk about these values in your group regularly. Hey guys, let's be inviting people to our group. If you meet somebody at church and they don't seem to be connected, invite them to our group. Hey guys, when we get big enough, we're going to multiply. That's going to be a big win for us. This is something we're looking forward to. And you're constantly talking about these values within your group so the group knows this is why we exist. This is the win that we're looking for as a group. And if you're communicating these values to your group in advance, then the group will buy into those values. If you're not communicating it and suddenly one week you say, hey guys, we're getting too big, we need to break out and start another group, and they haven't been mentally prepared for it, that's not going to go well, right? They're not going to see that as a win because you haven't prepared them to see it that way. Okay, last thing, and this is really quick, communication. Jennifer and I are committed to communicating with you and to provide training resources, to provide support resources, to provide help as you need it. And we're going to do our best to do that. And what we ask is that you also communicate with us regularly. Let us know kind of what's happening in your group, share victories with us, share concerns if you have concerns. You're going to be praying for people in your group. We're going to be praying for people in our groups too, but we're also going to be praying for you. And the more you communicate with us, the more we know what we can be praying for you as a leader. And so communicate with us about that. We really appreciate what you're doing. You are volunteering incredible numbers of hours to help people grow. You're serving in the kingdom. And there's great rewards for that because, as I said in the first session, we get to watch God work in the lives of people. And so there's great rewards in that, but you're stepping up to the plate and you're doing it. And we want to acknowledge that. We want to tell you that we're so thankful for you. We're cheering for you. We want to help you. And we appreciate what you're doing and the help that you're providing to Christ Church and also to the kingdom itself. All right? So thank y'all very much.
Great. Okay, thank you. Am I doing all of it?
Yeah, you're done.
Okay.
I'm done.
Okay. So, if you have a...
Oh, Greg, we have a kind of an optional session we can throw in if people want to wait till then.
Yeah. A lot of people want to wait. If you have a pen or maybe your phone or something, I need you to write something down, please. Some of you already have this information, but if you don't, I would like for you to write it down. It is, write down my name. My name is Greg. That's spelled with 2 G's. One at the front, one at the back. And my phone number is 214-364-2332. 214-364-2332. If you will, put that in your phone, and that way, if there are things that you would like us or the elders to pray for, you can just send me a text. If you ever need anything, you're welcome to call me. That's my cell phone. I have it almost all the time. And you are welcome at any point ever to call me. And you've got my number. If we can pray for you or someone in your group, send me a text. Here's what I do. I copy your text, and then I text it to all the elders. And we've got a group thread text that they receive, and they stop and pray. So you know that if you text me, boom, all the elders will be praying for whatever thing that is. So feel free to do that at any time. As we speak of our elders, I'd like to ask the elders to stand. Bruce, Anthony, Ben, Richard, Lloyd, if you guys would stand up, please. And most of you know these guys. And we missed one. There they are. Matt, Lucas, and Scott had kid duties today and were not able to be here. And these guys are amazing. Their wives are amazing. I'd especially like to point out Scott Morrison and Bruce Turner. They've served for 5 years, and in September they will be rolling off of the eldership, and they have just given their time, their lives, their prayer, their everything to our church. So thank you guys. And I'd also like to ask Wayne and Robert and Sam to stand up. Kyle has COVID and could not be here today. He's watching us online. So Kyle, you can stand up wherever you are. We'll appreciate that. But these guys will start in September as new elders. And we are blessed for that. So thank you, guys, and thank you all. One of the great blessings is to be able to lead people to Christ. And if you have those in your group or those that you know of who you think would be a good leader, would you please let us know? We'd love to be able to give them the blessing of being able to lead and serve. And we just need you to be our eyes and ears, because there are people in your group that are, I look at a dozen of you right now who at one point we didn't really know you very well. And then somebody said, he'd be a really great leader. And you are. And so if you identify people in your groups or in your sphere who are just spiritual leaders, would you point them out to us? Because we need men's groups and women's groups and co-ed leaders. We have a specific need that I'm excited about, and frankly think that you might be too, and maybe God's calling you to lead a specific group. It's a group that we want to start in September, if God will bring us the right leaders to do that. It's a curriculum called Starting Point, which has been written. It's not, you don't have to come up with your own curriculum, but it's specifically for people who are new to Christ Church and new to the Christian faith. And the curriculum that they read every day, you don't have to know all the stuff. You're just facilitating the discussion about who is God and why what is Christianity and who was Christ and what are the big questions of our day. And it is a huge need. Look, we're blessed at Christ Church that it's a huge need. There are some churches that have, everybody's been in church all their lives, and all the new people who come just come from other churches, and they don't need starting point. We have people who have never read the Bible. We have people who really have questions about God. Does he exist? And so we want to start a Sunday morning thing called Starting Point. Again, curriculum's already done. But if you'd be interested in doing that, if a couple of ladies want to start a ladies group and a couple of guys want to start a guys group, or we want to start a co-ed group, it doesn't matter. We just know that it's a need, and we're looking for leaders. I can't think of a more exciting way than to take someone who is new to exploring the Christian faith and being able to help them in their beginning journey. And if that's something that you're interested in learning more about, or at least thinking about, would you see Jim, or you could see me and I'll say, good, let's find Jim. So you can skip the middleman and go straight to Jim, if you will. That would be a blessing. We have upstairs, if you haven't seen them, you should, and you're welcome to walk up there right now. We have 3 rooms upstairs that we built specifically for small groups. They've got a little table in them. We have 4 rooms. Janet put them together for us. A couple of them just have like a living room type furniture that's in them. A couple of them have tables and chairs that you can sit around if you want. And they are for you to use on Sunday mornings or Sunday evenings or during the week. If you have a if the biggest problem in your group is where you want to meet, those rooms are for you and they are available for you. You will schedule that through Jim or Jennifer, and they're available all the time. And if you want a group that Kyle, what time does your group meets in one of those, right? It's Kyle. Great. Judy. 8:30 Sunday morning, they meet in one of those rooms upstairs. And so those are, they're just comfortable rooms if you need a place to meet. That's a good alternative. And finally, almost finally, we spend a lot of time praying for you. Once you step up to lead in a church setting, the evil one tries to attack. And we pray for your health, your spiritual health, your emotional health, and mostly your spiritual health. That God will bless you in what you're doing and will limit the times that you struggle. And so just know that we bathe you in prayer, and that behind the scenes we are praying for you and what you're doing for the cause of Christ. We're very thankful for it. So this Sunday we finished the series on Philippians, and the Sunday after that we start a new series called Be Rich. And it specifically takes what Paul said to the church when he told them to be rich. And we're going to be exploring that. And we are excited about that and hope that you and your groups will be blessed by Keith being back. No one is more excited about Keith being back than I am. I can assure you. And he's going to start that series. And so the last thing I'll leave you with is the lawyer, the lawyer who was in a small town, and United Way was looking at some fundraising, and they realized that based on their records, this lawyer had to make $2 million or more a year, and he had never given to the United Way, and it kind of came through their database. And so one of their representatives went down and took him to lunch and had lunch with him. They said, our records show that you make over $2 million a year, and you've never given to the United Way or anywhere in the community that we can find. And the lawyer just stopped him right there and said, wait a minute. Maybe your research didn't show you that my mother is very ill and she has these medical bills that far exceed her income. said, no. And he said, and maybe your research didn't show that my brother is a retired vet and he is blind in a wheelchair and he can't work. And I said, no. And he said, and maybe your research didn't show that my sister's husband died and left her penniless. He said, oh, no, I'm so sorry. And the lawyer said, and if I don't give to any of them, why would I give to you? God, thank you for a place where we can laugh together, we can cry together, we can grow together, we can struggle together. And we are truly blessed to have a church family that really feels like a family. Thank you for that. I thank you for each person here today and those that couldn't be here today, that you would bless them, that you would protect them, that you would allow them to see the fruit of what they're doing, and that you would help them to know that in some cases they are planting seeds. And it may be 50 or 100 years where the tree grows and is flourishing, and we may never see the results of some of the things that we do, and that's okay, because we know you're working. Thank you for those who give their lives in service to you, especially those who lead. May we lead as servants first, just as your son did. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen. Thank you guys for being here. We finished just only 45 minutes sooner than we told you, and we don't think that that's disappointing. We love you guys.